$11,000. That's what my sister-in-law thought was sitting in an account she was about to charge a vacation to. $22 is what was actually there. I'd already moved my own money out 3 weeks before she ever tried. She had no idea I was 200 miles away, already at a river with my own kids. She had no idea a hotel clerk in Gatlinburg was about to say one word to her face, in front of her own children, declined. If you've ever quietly funded people who didn't think you belonged at their own table, stay with me. What happened next, even I didn't see coming. By the time my phone started ringing 19 times in 90 minutes, none of them had any idea how long I'd been planning my way out. Let me back up, because this didn't start with a phone call. It started 4 years earlier, the week my father died. My name's Carla Doyle. I'm 47. I run payroll and dispatch for a freight company outside Sevierville, Tennessee for 4 years. I quietly funded a family vacation nobody ever thanked me for. Until the year I stopped. Math never lied. I balance fuel receipts for 140 trucks every week, and I can tell you the exact day this story started. The Tuesday my sister-in-law decided my kids weren't real family anymore. Have you ever kept a relative's lights on for years, only to learn you were the one thing standing between them and a bill they couldn't pay? My father, Earl Doyle, spent 31 years as a diesel mechanic. His hands stayed stained black with grease that never fully washed out. He never complained. 3 years ago, in a hospital bed with a heart that had finally quit on him, he handed me his old fishing tackle box. Inside it was every account my mother would ever need, and one envelope he told me not to open yet. My brother Russell got Dad's truck. I got the responsibility. My mother, Sandra, never once asked why. 3 years later, when I finally worked up the nerve to open that envelope, the very first line he'd written was 7 words that here's what you need to understand before any of this makes sense. For 4 years, I was the one paying for a vacation that wasn't even mine to plan anymore. And the year I finally stopped is the year my family found out exactly how much they needed me. My father loved the Little Pigeon River the way some men love a well-tuned engine patient, particular, a little obsessive about it. When he died, I could have let the tradition die with him. Instead, I kept booking the cabin. I kept packing the cooler. I kept footing the bill because my kids, Maya, 11, and Theo, 7, had never once known a summer without that river. Last year, that trip cost $640. I covered $590 of it. Vanessa sent $50 2 months late after I asked 4 times. My mother sent nothing and called it helping with groceries instead. Have you ever quietly subsidized somebody's vacation and called it love because saying the real word out loud felt too ugly? This year, Vanessa had a different plan. In March, on an ordinary gray Thursday, I learned through my mother, who cannot keep a secret to save her own pension, that Vanessa had been telling my brother I owed this family, that I was sitting on Dad's life insurance like it was mine alone. $11,000. That's the number she'd guessed was in the account I'd kept open since the funeral. The account I'd added a debit card to 2 years earlier, strictly for my mother's gas money and pharmacy runs. Authorized user, not a blank check. In April, at my niece Brielle's 9th birthday, Vanessa pulled me into my mother's kitchen. She told me flat, rehearsed, like she'd practiced the line in her car that they'd booked a 4-bedroom cabin in Gatlinburg with a hot tub and a mountain view. My kids weren't invited. They're not really pulling their weight around here anyway, she said. I looked past her shoulder into the living room. My mother stood there, holding a debit card between 2 fingers. My debit card. The one I'd left behind for emergencies 2 years before. I didn't argue. I called my kids, grabbed my coat, and left. 3 days later, Maya came home from riding the bus with Brielle and asked me something, straight-faced, that stopped me cold. Why does Aunt Vanessa say we're not real family? That's the sentence I still hear, word for word, to this day. Here's the part people never agree on when I tell this story out loud. Was it wrong of me to let my mother keep that card afterward, already knowing exactly what would happen to it? Some people say I built a trap. I'd say I simply stopped being surprised. That night, I checked my account. 3 withdrawals I hadn't made: gas, groceries, a restaurant I'd never set foot in. My mother said it was a mix-up. I believed her the first time, not the second. The next morning, I drove across town and opened a brand new account at a different credit union. I moved every dollar I'd actually saved. $3,400. Not 11,000, because nobody in my family had ever once checked a fact before repeating it as gospel. I left $22 behind in the old account. I told absolutely no one. 2 weeks later, Sunday dinner at my mother's table, Vanessa slid her phone across to show off photos of a cabin with a hot tub shaped like a wine barrel. 4 nights, $2,900 total. You can't afford it anyway, she said, laughing once through her nose. My son Theo, 7, looked up from his plate. Are we going to the mountains too, Mommy? The table went quiet in the exact way a room goes quiet when everyone already knows the answer is no. We'll have ours. I squeezed his shoulder. I washed the dishes once dinner ended. I took my kids home and opened my laptop at 11 that night. I found a campground 40 minutes outside Cherokee with a 1-room riverside cabin. $89 a night. No hot tub. Just a porch, a screen door, and a view my father once called good enough to argue with. 4 nights, $356 total. I had it. I booked it. I wrote river trip on a sticky note and stuck it to my fridge, no dates, no location, because I already knew exactly how fast information traveled through my family. What I didn't learn until weeks later from a cousin who'd heard it from Russell at a cookout was simple. Vanessa had already charged $800 non-refundable dollars to her own credit card as a deposit. She was banking on the remaining $2,100 landing on my account 3 days before check-in. She won't catch on until the charge clears, she told my brother. He didn't argue with her. If you've ever watched somebody build an entire plan around money that was never theirs to spend, you already know how this ends. You just don't know yet how bad it gets first. A week before check-in, I found my father's old tackle box on the top shelf of my closet behind a bin of winter coats. Inside, his fishing license, a faded photo of him and my mother at that same river in 1991, and a white envelope with my name written in block letters, the same handwriting he used on every invoice he ever sent. I'd had it 3 years. I'd never once opened it. I sat down on the closet floor and finally did. 7 sentences. No lecture, no guilt. He'd written, "Carla, you keep your word when nobody else in this family does. Don't let kindness turn into a key to your wallet. The day helping them starts costing you more than it gives back, stop. You've carried this family long enough already. Now go let your kids run wild by that river." I folded it along his original creases and slid it behind my driver's license, where I'd feel its edge every time I reached for a card. This was never really about one cabin in Tennessee or 22 leftover dollars. Every family has a person who pays and a person who plans around the paying, and the line between being needed and being used usually comes down to one unanswered phone call. being needed and being used look identical from the outside. 3 days before check-in, the booking system automatically ran the remaining charge $2,100 against a debit card linked to an account holding $22. It didn't clear. Declined. The resort emailed Vanessa within minutes, full payment required in 48 hours, or the reservation, deposit included, would be canceled outright. She called my mother first. "The card's right here in my purse," my mother told her. The way people talk when their certain reality is about to apologize for disagreeing with them. She drove straight to the bank. She fed the card into the machine. She watched the screen confirm the exact number I'd already known for weeks. $22. Vanessa called me 4 times in 20 minutes. I was at the river with my own kids, phone buzzing inside a beach bag at my feet. Have you ever had to choose between answering for someone else's mess and watching your son catch his very first crawfish? I chose crawfish. Theo held it up like a trophy, half furious and half thrilled that it had pinched him. And I missed call number 5, laughing at the look on his face. 2 days later, Vanessa and my mother actually reached the Gatlinburg cabin. Vanessa was gambling that a partial payment plus some pleading might be enough. The front desk had different math waiting for her. A clerk in a navy polo typed Vanessa's name twice, frowned, and said the balance was still short by $1,200. Vanessa slid over her own credit card, already maxed out from the deposit. Declined again hard. My niece Brielle asked where their room was. Vanessa told her not now. My mother lowered herself into a lobby chair the way a woman sits when her knees have learned something her mouth hasn't caught up to yet. This is the moment I think about most. The one my mother's oldest friend Pam described to me weeks later with the kind of exact detail that only comes from someone who isn't lying and has nothing left to gain from it. My mother watched my 5-year-old nephew Cooper ask why Maya and Theo got a river and he didn't, and something in her face finally cracked open. "Vanessa," she said, quiet enough the front desk barely caught it, "look what we did to those kids." Nobody answered her. My brother Russell, who'd helped load the truck that morning and nothing else since, didn't pick up when Vanessa called the parking lot twice. The $800 deposit was gone. The dinner cruise Vanessa had already tacked onto the bill went with it. If you've ever watched a plan collapse under the exact weight of the dishonesty that built it, you already know there's no sound quite like silence in a parking lot that's still 94 degrees at 6 in the evening. I learned all of it from 19 missed calls and 3 voicemails I let sit in my beach bag until after dinner. My mother's voice in the first one cracked in a way I had never once heard from her. The trip fell apart. Please call me back. I listened to all 38 seconds of it. Then I zipped the bag shut, because there was nothing I could say from 200 miles away that would unspend money that was never theirs to spend. Some things wait. That night, Maya found a river stone, flat and split clean down the middle, and held it up. Is it still good if it's broken? I turned it over in my palm. The best ones usually are, I told her. She grinned and ran back toward the water. My father's letter sat folded in my wallet, 3 feet from my hip, doing exactly what he'd asked it to do all along. We came home Sunday, sunburned and quiet in the good way. 2 full weeks of silence from Russell and Vanessa followed, which, in my family, counts as its own kind of confession. My mother called on a Tuesday. "I want to apologize," she said. I let her. I shouldn't have kept that card. I shouldn't have gone along with any of it. How many times had I already heard some version of I didn't mean for it to go this far, and quietly paid for it anyway, not this time. I told her 3 things, plainly: no more shared accounts, no more cards left behind for emergencies, and she's welcome to see my kids any Sunday she likes, but she will never again fund a single plan that leaves them out. Some people will tell you that's harsh for a 70-year-old woman scared of being alone. Maybe it is. I'd rather be harsh once than quietly resentful for another 4 years. Russell called exactly once, 3 weeks later, to tell me Vanessa blamed me for ruining the whole trip. I told him the trip ruined itself the day his wife told a 9-year-old her cousins weren't real family. She did that. He didn't argue back. He just went quiet. The same quiet I'd learned from our father, the kind that means a man has finally run out of excuses for somebody he loves. At the county fair in August, I spotted Vanessa across the food tent. She looked at her plate. I looked at mine. No scene, no speech, just 2 women on opposite sides of a fryer smell, both choosing not to make it any worse. Isn't that, in the end, what most family endings actually look like? Not a courtroom, just 2 people quietly deciding not to fight in front of the kids? Brielle ran over anyway, grabbed Maya's hand, and the 2 of them disappeared toward the Ferris wheel like none of it had ever happened to them, because to them it hadn't. That part was never theirs to carry. My father spent 31 years making sure other people's engines ran right. He left me 1 envelope and 7 sentences, and somehow that did more for my family than 4 years of $300 a month ever managed to. If you've ever paid for a seat at a table that was never actually set for you, you already know the only invitation that matters is the one you finally write yourself. I still drive to that same river every June, just me, Maya, and Theo. A cooler in the trunk and my father's tackle box riding shotgun, never going back on a closet shelf again. Never going back. If you've ever balanced everyone else's books and quietly called it love, hit like. Subscribe if you've ever covered a tab that nobody else ever planned to pay you back for. And tell me below, when did you finally stop covering everybody else's tab? I'll see you in the next story, right here on When Family Revenge Strikes. You weren't hard to love. You were just easy to bill.